Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second live workshop of the day. This afternoon, I'm very happy to welcome Miss Paula Huerta, who's going to be giving us this workshop. Paula is joining from Lombok in Indonesia, and Paula is the founder of Bamboo Studio. She's also a licensed architect, originally from Spain, and her specialism is in sustainable design. This afternoon's workshop will last around 35 to 40 minutes, and then we will have time for a Q&A session after the workshop is complete. So please do feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and Paula will address some of these questions at the end of her workshop. So the title of the workshop is Closing the Loop, the Role of Sustainable Architecture and Circular Economy in the Tourism Sector. As many of you will be already aware, the challenges of the present times oblige us to move towards a low carbon future. And one way to do this is to transition from the current linear economy to a more circular economy. And on top of that, sustainable architecture is also, of course, another very important means to address the issues of environmental protection in tourism. So we're very happy to welcome Paula to give this workshop today. And I'd like to now hand over to you, Paula.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Amir. Hello, good afternoon, everyone, or maybe good morning for any of you joining from Europe. I hope everybody is doing good and healthy and safe wherever you are in these strange times. Maybe a bit hangover from the US elections. Looks like we may have a new president that may hopefully take the environment a little bit seriously, more seriously. And that will hopefully be very good news for us. And I hope you also feel motivated and content with all these amazing lectures and workshops that we've been having the last 2 days. Today, my goal on my presentation is to raise awareness and provide information so that it gets you thinking. I do not come here with all the answers. I'm going to show a few case studies of here Lombok, where I live. I do come with a lot of questions and a couple of very promising case studies that I hope, motivate you to keep fighting to save the planet. Yes, so to briefly introduce myself a little bit, I'm Paula Huerta. I'm an architect from Spain. I specialize in sustainable architecture, and I had been a sustainability consultant for over 15 years. I'm a lead AP, a BREEAM AP, and a Green Manager. And now, besides having my own sustainable consultative firm and architectural office, I'm also an ambassador for the Advanced Leadership Foundation, for which I lecture around the world, like here today. Talk mostly about circular economy, and because this is the economical model that we need to follow if we want to save the planet, and that applies to everything, including the tourism sector. But when we obviously talk about saving the planet, we actually mean save our survival and the survival of all the other species that live currently here with us in the planet. The planet has had 5 mass extinctions already, and life has always come back in different forms, and it might take a long time, but it's always come back. So there is no doubt that, life is always going to be there. Whether we'll survive or not in it, that's a different story. So now, to give you a little bit of an introduction of where we are now, the big picture in global economy without COVID, obviously, it is important to mention the Third Industrial Revolution book by Jeremy Rifkin. He explains that we are entering in a new industrial revolution, and he says that every industrial revolution that has ever happened has always had a common denominator, and that's when 3 technologies emerge and converge to create a new infrastructure that fundamentally changes the way we manage power and move economy on Earth. Those 3 technologies are related to communication, energy, and transport. So we start with the first industrial revolution in the 19th century, and that came with a new source of energy, which was coal. Coal led to the steam engine, which led to the railway, which was a new way of transportation. And in new communications, we had the telegram and the printing press, the industrial printing press. In the 20th century, we had the second industrial revolution, and that came with oil as a new source of energy. We had new transportation with the combustion engine, cars and aeroplanes, and we have new communication technologies with telephone and centralized electricity. Now we are entering into the third industrial revolution. We've already witness how internet has changed the whole communications of the planet, and now we're entering into the Internet of Things. That's when, you know, through internet you can connect to things. So I can order my lunch, my groceries, my shopping from Amazon, or get my car at the door thanks to the internet. Then we have new source of energies coming up, which are renewables. It is said that in 20 years renewables are going to be powering most of the world's energy needs. And then we have new transportation technologies like driverless cars or drones. The only situation right now in this third industrial revolution is that at the same time, we are in a huge environmental crisis, and the global economy is a crisis. Now it's related to COVID, but COVID is also related to the impact that humans are making in the planet. So the exponential exhaustion of natural resources, declining in productivity, slow growth, rising unemployment, steep inequality forces us to rethink our economical model. The second industrial revolution and its oil extraction and burning of fossil fuels is also directly related to the population growth. We are the most populated animal in the planet. We account for like 96% of the weight of all of the animals in the planet. If you look at these graphs on the right, we have the world carbon emissions from the 1600s till the year 2000. And you can see in the 19th century with coal, how they started to rise. And now they are almost like a vertical line. It's exponential. But if you look down at the graph where we have in red extraction of oil and we have in blue population on Earth, it's almost the same graph. We are directly related to the extraction and the burning of fossil fuel. And in fact, Jeremy Rifkin, in his book, he says that if humanity makes it to this big environmental crisis, when they look back to this era, they'll see us as the fossil fuel people, which is pretty sad if you think about it. In 2018, I was lucky enough to be selected to participate in the first forum of circular economy and technology innovation in Madrid. During this week, we had master classes and workshops, and our teachers were these top figures and high-profile personalities. There were 5 Nobel Prizes, 2 former presidents. I mean, we had Obama there, right? 2 economy Nobel Prizes. We had the grandson of Nelson Mandela, United Nations, World Bank, International Finance Corporation. Like the world's most influential and knowledgeable people were there to teach us. And the whole purpose of the forum was to teach us about circular economy so that later we could become ambassadors and could become keynote speakers, so to promote and raise awareness of the circular economy. Now, to give you a brief idea what circular economy means, the economy model that we've always been using throughout the first and the second industrial revolution is the linear model. So we have resource extraction, production, manufacturing, distribution, consumption, and then waste, disposal. The linear economy depends dramatically on natural resources and is exposed to their availability and their price. This brings limited earnings, and there's huge losses in waste. If you think about it, waste is a concept that only exists in human production. Nature doesn't have such thing as waste. So the aim right now with the circular economy is redefine the way we produce things and learn more from nature so that we can regenerate. No, we are looking beyond the current take, make and dispose model of the first and the second industrial revolution, and instead thinking about regenerative and design for waste out. Waste needs to disappear out of the equation, and obviously underpinned by renewable energy sources, because we need to dramatically lower our CO2 emissions. if you want to know a lot more about circular economy, I mean, in the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, in the website, there's all the papers and resources that you need to go deep on it. But I'm briefly going to mention the 3 basic principles. The principle 1 is to preserve and enhance the natural capital, which makes sense. If everything we extract and we make is from the natural environment, destroying the natural environment is like killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. It's as simple as that. We need to make sure that nature has time to regenerate that natural environment. The second principle is to optimize resource yield by recirculating materials. That means that we need to consider where the materials come from, restore them, regenerate them, and bring them back to the earth. And then we have the principle 3, which is to foster system effectiveness and consider the externalities. We have been ignoring the dramatic externalities of all of the first and second industrial revolution. We've been ignoring the emissions. We've been ignoring the natural, capital depletion. We've been ignoring the pollution. And now we can see the results of all of that. We can see the enormous consequences that it's having in the planet and in the economy and in our health in general. So we cannot keep ignoring those externalities any longer. When I was in this forum, I couldn't help to wonder, like, why all these people and high-profile personalities are telling us that we need to change our economical model. I mean, they're not telling us, like, consume less, be more conscious, live a low-impact life, eat less meat, have less kids. No, they're just talking about the economy. And the reason why they're talking about circular economy is because they understand that the linear economy is obsolete. There is clear consequences of the clear economy already in our current system. We have a huge decrease on raw materials, and we have very negative environmental impact. And that's decreasing the world's productivity, and that's eventually decreasing the world's GDP. And as the third industrial revolution kicks in and the middle class arises, the linear economy system is just simply unable to support the transformation. When I was there, I was thinking, I have heard about this concept before. Maybe it wasn't called circular economy, but then I remember this book, Cradle to Cradle. I got it in the early 2000s, and it was given to me by my boss. And this book was the revolutionary event that happened in my life. I decided to shift my whole career from a designer architect to become a sustainability expert. This book was written by an architect and by a chemist, and it lays out the same concept of circularity. They talk about waste is a concept of the human race, and there is no such thing of waste in nature. And they were throwing questions that I was, it was very challenging for me. And it was like, why does a shampoo bottle need to last 400 years in the ocean when you're only going to use the shampoo for 2-3 months? Like, those inefficiencies, especially when we think that we've been throwing these bottles for decades and decades, are huge losses to the planet. We've been designing wrongly. So they explain the 2 cycles, which are deeply explained in the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. One is the biological cycle, which is everything that biodegrades. That's how nature works. But then we have the technical cycle. So for example, I buy a washing machine, it breaks after a few years. I have the supplier coming back, taking back, dismantling the washing machine, reusing all of the materials, and then sending me a new washing machine. That is how the materials go back into the technical cycle instead of sending those to landfill. But for that, every designer, every architect, every engineer needs to start designing differently. We have never been designing for waste out. We have never been designing for disassembly. And now it's a new way that we need to all incorporate into our design system, which is to design for disassembly so that all of those materials can go back into the technical cycle. Now, how does that apply into the tourism sector? Like, how important is the concept of circularity in tourism? When we think of tourism, our holidays, even when a country wants to promote their country as a tourist destination, They always use this romantic idea of like how holidays should look like, pristine beaches, clean nature, lovely restaurants, pretty buildings, cultural activities, it's everything that has to do with like relaxing and enjoying. But the reality is that the tourism sector is one of the most resource intensive sectors in the world. And if you think about it, it's pretty straightforward. For any country, the tourism roadmap is intended to grow. This means that you want to bring as many tourists as possible to spend as much money as possible. And this will help the economy of the country. And in fact, we're talking about, without COVID, it's like $1 trillion sector a year. And in many countries and regions, mostly, especially in Southeast Asia, tourism is the primary source of foreign exchange and employment and cash, right? But it has always been thought as a linear growth, and it's full of externalities. There's traffic, there's noise, there is pollution, there is non-stop construction, there is waste management, there is environmental damage, there is a lot of energy and water consumption. When we look at new tourist developments that are in the making, the result products is always like this high density development, villas, hotels, to allow for massification. And, there's always like this huge lack of planning to consider those externalities and those impacts that all of this massification is going to have. I live in Lombok, which is this wonderful, tourist destination. It's still pretty untouched. It's the twin sister island of Bali, which in contrast is already massively developed. So Lombok offers this alternative opportunity for like a cleaner and more relaxing holiday with less crowds. But of course, since a few years ago, Indonesia has these huge plans for Lombok to develop it as a tourist destination, which is supposed to benefit everybody in the island. There's this new Mandelica tourist development in the south of Lombok, which is where I live. And of course, like in any other place in the planet, the master plan is based on the same principles we've been talking about. Bring as many people as possible to spend as much money as possible. But there is very little consideration in the externalities or the impact. It has been thought linear like every other place in the planet. So the master plan of Mandelica covers like 1,200 hectares with over 10,500 hotel rooms. It has 100 hectares a golf course, a water park, a theme park, and the big cherry on the cake is to bring the MotoGP as part of the development, which clearly shows to me that the whole thinking process to make money and to develop these tourist areas far from what we really need. There is barely any thinking of renewables, no sustainable building targets, no incentive of better performance. And that's, one of the lectures that we're talking this morning. There is no waste management system here in place. They're not giving any thought of those externalities. They're just trying to sell this romantic idea once again. And now in the aftermath of COVID, it is really clear that tourism sector needs to be thought to be more resilient, more greener, and more sustainable. Even just considering the new architecture that is coming, it is far from what we would consider sustainable architecture. And it's, this kind of architecture is just going to continue increasing the environmental impact in the region. I don't know if anyone is aware of this, but the building stock accounts for the largest #1 CO2 emitter in the planet. And it makes sense because we do most of our activities in buildings. So humans consume most of their electricity and water through buildings. Indonesia pledged to the Paris Agreement. So there is a big target to reduce energy emissions. Today here, there were a few lectures in the EXPO related to this topic, how to improve the performance of the architecture, make it more efficient. But there is also a huge component in the way we use buildings, and even more big in tourism, right? A huge factor in the tourism sector is that tourists have a very different behavior when they're on their holiday than when they are on their normal lives. Tourists consume more during their holidays than they do in their normal lives. They shop more, they eat outside more, they leave the AC in the room the whole day so that they can be fresh when they come back, since they don't pay the energy bills. They take longer showers. They expect to come to a tropical weather and sleep under a blanket at 16 degrees. tourists are demanding. This is their holiday. They're entitled to let go and to enjoy to the fullest, right? So the tourism sector in general is a lot more impactful through human behavior than any other sector. When we look at Lombok now, yeah, the potential is there. I mean, there's waves, there's fine sand beaches, the weather is wonderful. It's so beautiful. But the reality is already that before the big development comes, we can already see the problems facing us, which will only get worse when this development comes, right? So when we think of what's happening, we cannot avoid to think like, oh my God, so where are they gonna get all the fresh water for these buildings? Like, we are already water stressed. We have droughts every year. Like, dry seasons are getting longer and longer every year. Like, where's all the electricity gonna come from? Indonesia usually use mostly coal to produce their electricity. So the emissions are just gonna go higher and higher. And we have constant power cuts also. How is the tourist going to move around? You know, there's no public sustainable transportation infrastructure. Where are the people going to park their cars? And where is all this garbage going to go? There's no waste management system here yet. You know, we're already burying under garbage. I mean, this is a photo of a Lombok beach every morning. If you come here and you see a beach that is clean, that means that in the morning people come and clean it out. There is so much trash that comes from the oceans with the tides every day. This is a reality, and this is before the big tourism development even has happened, right? So the big question would be like, will tourism make Lombok better? Is it really going to be better for the economy? For the precious resources we depend on, for the local people, for the investors? The solution would be, we need to plan it better. We need to plan it more circular and more resilient. Of course, because I live here, I can see the transformation with my own eyes. I came to Lombok in 2014. After 7 years as a sustainable consultant working for corporations in Singapore, when I came, I started Bangkok Studio, my architectural office that focuses only in sustainable architecture, right? It all started with my house, which is in the photo, which is a bamboo structure. It's 100% circular. It's designed for this assembly. It's net zero, which means that all the water and electricity that comes from site, we have solar panels. We treat and recycle all of our water. We live a very low impact life in an extremely low impact house. I live here with my husband and my son, and this first project of my house, it led me to get more clients. Like most expats living here, my work relies entirely on the tourism sector, right? We only take projects that consider and follow our values. We only work with clients that agree with our sustainability principles, which is key in the roadmap towards a low carbon future. We need to be able to set the limits when it comes to what we do and our work, right? We do a lot of net zero architecture. We do a lot of low impact architecture, villa hotels, retreats, restaurants. We apply always the same principles: passive design, sustainable and local materials, rainwater capture, water treatment and reuse through wastewater gardens. We incorporate renewables, mostly solar. And not only that, but we also participate in lectures in the schools, promote bamboo as sustainable material. We do workshops of passive designs. But for me, clearly, and even for Lombok, you know, this is not nearly enough. I always feel that I must do more to make it. And for my son, you know, I feel obliged to do more. But it always comes down to like how to do more. What else can we do? So this same discussion I had with my now friend Shiva during a lunch last year. I had just been lecturing about sustainable architecture and circular economy in the Singapore Community Council. And, you know, after the lecture, you always feel quite empowered and, you know, you feel like you're doing great and amazing work, but the reality is that we are not making enough impact. Now, Shiva is the founder of Energy Asia, which is a venture studio that has different startups, and all of them have a common denominator, which is circularity. And his main goal is to scale so that the transition to circular economy can be done faster. So I was telling him about Lombok and, you know, its current situation and how all these developments that are coming, and how if we wanted to do things different, now is the time to do it before the development really comes, you know? And, I feel like Lombok has a moment of opportunity right now. And immediately he came out with this idea of circular Lombok. And he told me, let's make the first circular island in the world. And of course, we're action people, so we just started hands-on. One of the first things that we do, and this is the beginning of the case studies that I want to present to you, that we have been working here in Lombok, is that we decided to start an eco flea market. We thought that markets are very popular tourist attraction. I mean, with clear examples like the Anjuna flea market in Goa, India, or the Chiang Mai market in Thailand, the night market there. And even though, we thought like this could make a good impact for Lombok, to start branding it as an environmental friendly place. So we took out of the 17 sustainable guidelines in the UN website, in the United Nations websites, and we applied six main principles to this market, which were women's empowerment. We want to support local makers. We conscious shopping, buy less, choose well, circular economy, reuse, repair, recycle, earth-friendly lifestyle, start with easy swaps, local roots, local organic products from local farms, and pop-up. Smaller space and impact and bigger reach. So what we did was started contacting like around 6 potential vendors, people that we knew they were following the same principles, as the market. Those vendors put us in contact with more people that were following. And at the end, I think we had like 22 vendors in the first Lombok Eco Flea Market that happened last November. And we had in a single weekend over 1,000 visitors. I mean, it was incredible. There were all of these vendors with amazing products that I wasn't even aware that they existed in Lombok. We were able to make like an area of a small farmers market with 5 different organic farms, organic coffee, homemade healthy food from like backyards, orchards. We had all sorts of not only environmental friendly, but also locally made soaps and sunscreen and beauty products. There was waste to value products, zero waste products, reused fabrics makes into new clothing by women's group. I mean, it was a total success, mind-blowing event. Sales were outstanding. Expat loved it, that something new was happening. Tourists loved the concept and the message. And the story doesn't end there. Of course, the first eco flea market led into more flea markets in different areas. Now we had a group, we had a community, all these different vendors, more started approaching. We could connect, we could improve, we could collaborate, right? Bigger eco flea markets started happening. And obviously COVID put a stop to it. But not really, because, we were approached also by the female wave of change, and we were asked to join the international community to speak about Lombok Eco Flea Market and provide what we call Eco Markets beginner guide so that other countries could start similar initiatives. We were approached by the province government in Lombok, and we're already planning a much bigger event in Mataram, which is the capital of Lombok, once COVID allows. We have created a movement that is not only environmental friendly and social friendly and educational, it's actually also profitable. So this is actually very important, because once you cover the 3 main pillars of sustainability, economical, social, and environmental, then, it's so much easier to reach farther away. The second thing that we did, and this is another case study, as part of the Circular Lombok idea, was to host an event in my office. This was last December. We called the event Circular Lombok. And it was a similar concept of the Eco Flea Market. We invited different people around the area, Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia mostly, to come and join for 2 days. The first day we had everybody presenting in a 20-minute presentation who they were and what were they doing. And so that basically we could know each other. And the second day we divided the 18 participants into 6 groups that were basically represented the 6 main areas, focus areas that we covered in the event, right? So it was building and materials, it was land use and agriculture, it was water systems, waste management, renewable energy, and community and education. This is us doing the presentations and the workshops, and this is us you know, after we finish looking at the future of what Lombok will look like, you know, out of that event, many projects and initiatives and collaborations came out. And there's still a lot of them in the making, but the potential of each of them is enormous. And the idea that together we're stronger, that the communities and common encounter areas are essential to make things happen. And in many cases, since there are so many stakeholders to get a project going, is essential. You know, creating this group, these collaboration groups is very important. The most advanced project out of this Circularlombok event is one that I want to talk to you about. It's also happening here in Lombok, near us. It's almost about to be inaugurated. There's a few projects that obviously COVID has slowed down, but this one's still ongoing. And this initiative is to implement an organic waste conversion system in Lombok through black soldier fly. The pilot project is 1 ton of organic waste conversion a day, and it is built very near where we are, very near the Mandelica tourist development, so it could cater, you know, the waste processing for all of the tourism development that is coming. The project is part of a bigger MOU that we managed to sign with the government to achieve 7 tons of waste conversion a day within a year. And this project is really, really special because, first of all, it's an inclusive business model, right? It involves local people, public sector, and the private sector. So there is a common effort, and everybody has a task, and everybody's responsible for something, and everybody gets some benefit from it. Second, is a clear example of circular economy, where the fruits and the meat create compost and extend proteins that after become again the feed of the plants and the animals that then become the meat and the meat and the vegetables that then will become organic waste. It's a complete loop that feeds itself and creates value for itself. Then it helps climate change mitigation as it relieves landfill from methane emissions that happen when you throw organic waste together with all the other waste. It also increases the option of waste management. Separating organic waste first from the other waste streams helps tremendously the overall separation of the waste. So once organic waste is separated first, the next step are a lot easier. So this is what we wanted to focus on, organic waste first. Then it improves public health, you know, mostly because due to the lack of oxygen, organic waste in landfills, they go through the decomposition, and it creates serious health risks. And it improves farming and increasing tourism potential by using compost as a natural fertilizer and having a cleaner island. I want to emphasize on how this is a clear example of circularity. And I go back to the same principles that I was explaining before. Organic waste gets treated through maggots, which are these black soldier fly larvae. The maggots then become free protein, which after becomes natural feed for the chickens, which actually later will become organic waste. And the byproduct of the food of the organic waste after the maggot have converted it is compost, which will feed the plants, which will feed the cattle, or again will become organic waste. So principle 1 of the circular economy, this system preserves and enhances the natural capital. It reduces the need of chemical fertilizer, as it creates a superorganic compost in large volumes, reduce the need of land and the use of land to grow soy or to grow corn to feed chickens, which accounts for a massive environmental impact worldwide. It reduces the greenhouse emissions as it relieves the landfill from methane emissions that happen when organic waste gets mixed with the other waste. The second principle, it optimizes resources. This is a clear example of biological cycle. You know, it allows for further waste separation. So it will allow to optimize the resources. And another thing, we're not using machines, to convert the organic waste into compost. And that's the third principle. It fosters system effectiveness. This is a complete sustainable process. The hard work is not made by machines. We don't need to burn fossil fuels or use electricity for it. It is done by insects. We use nature. We work with nature. there is barely any emissions in this whole system, which is key for the success of all of our industrial processes, as we were talking. Now, look at the collaboration overview. We have the public sector. They are collecting the waste, transporting the waste, and providing the land to build the facilities. We have the private sector in the form of investors, facilitators, and donors. And then we have the non-profit sectors in the form of trainings and educational programs. Note that Renergy and Fitworks, which is one of their startups here in Indonesia and in Singapore, and then our Bamboo and Bamboo Studio, all four of us, we were part of the Circularlombok. This initiative came as part of the Circularlombok event, and it doesn't end there. Out of this MOU that we managed to sign for 7 tons of waste conversion a day, that all of the stakeholders that I showed before signed, there is a need for new facilities to be built, obviously. So what best opportunity for Bamboo Studio for us to design and incorporate circular designs into this facility. So Bamboo Studio is not only a facilitator here, but it's also the ones in charge of the design and the construction of these waste management facilities. And of course, we couldn't do less but to design low impact, design for this assembly, environmental friendly with local materials using bamboo as main structural material. And also we incorporated bamboo trainings for empowering the local people and help them learn how to build in bamboo in collaboration with our friends from Our Bamboo, which were part of the Circularlombok event, and which is a NGO here in Singapore, in Lombok, that help to empower people through bamboo construction. So it took us several months to get this collaboration and all these stakeholders and business plan. Shiva had experience with similar projects because one of the Renergy startups called Insectify had already begun BSF facilities in India. And they had already collaborated with ProBSF, who is a non-profit, that they're the experts on the know-how. They're the ones that are bringing all the feedstock and organic waste survey and the trainings, and they help us, a lot, obviously, to get this collaboration right. Then we have GIZ, which was essential in everything that had to do with connecting us to the government. So being a private initiative, now we are working with the public sector. So in fact, when we had the whole business plan and the initiative ready, we had the opportunity to present this to the governor in Lombok, who was fully supporting and backing up through the whole process. Now, this facility is almost done and should be operating in December already. And there's more locations that are in the making. And there's so many other regions that are interested in this to happen in their areas as well. So we hope that we can scale up fast because we really need it. And if you want to follow, you need to just follow any of the Renergy or Feedworks or Bamboo Studio or Our Bamboo or ProBSF Instagram or websites. There's a lot of updates there. And my last slide, I just would like to finish my presentation with another project that is still on project state, that also came out of the Circularlombok event, and it has to do a little bit more on sustainability and sustainable architecture. And that's the Power Height Lombok. The Power Height is a concept developed by Billion Bricks, which is an NGO from Singapore which focuses on low-cost sustainable architecture. They were also part of the Circularlombok event. Power Height was conceived as the world's first carbon positive residence, for the homeless initially, because it uses very little power on operations, but it has a lot of solar panels in the roof that create 4 times the amount of energy that the building needs for itself. But in Lombok, what we decided to do was to focus the same idea, but making instead tourist bungalows so that investors could consider this kind of like net zero architectures for the hotel developments and improve, therefore, the environmental footprint of these hotels within, the tourism sector. Now, to wrap up everything, and my point or my conclusion out of all of this that I've been telling you would be that in general, we all need to do more. obviously, there is change is very possible. Collaborations are key for this change. Connect to other people. There's a huge shift happening already in economy. As I told you, there's the third industrial revolution coming in. New economic models are coming. There's new business models happening right now that are leading to huge market opportunities. You can actually become rich and successful by helping develop the sustainable, innovative buildings that actually the world needs. So do it for your kids. Don't get stuck. Focus on the future. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you very much, Paula. That was really, really fascinating to hear about your experiences and your story, and I think a really strong call to action for everybody to help rebuild our future in a more sustainable way. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A box. So if you wouldn't mind just opening that section and.
Okay, yeah, I see the first one. Do you see tourists to Lombok visiting your organic waste conversion facility and are getting trained? I mean, we want to span this concept everywhere. I would love to, once we have the first pilot project starting in December, I think it would be a great thing to have tourists coming. I don't know if to get trained there, but maybe having like a day, visit workshop where they can understand about the concept. Black soldier fly is a very simple technology to use. I have it in my own house. We also have some home kits for people that don't have the option of having their waste collected and bring it to these facilities. So it could be done on a home level as well. But, there's already talks about partnering for a longer term. Renergy is talking to BSF and getting a long-term partnership so that they can scale up in Indonesia, these systems everywhere. And I'm pretty sure they'll be, super excited to get people to visit and, join the movement and get trained so that they can implement this elsewhere.
Very exciting. Thank you. And there's one more question. Can you see that one?
Yeah. What has been the most difficult aspect of structuring this type of public-private partnership? Do you see this as a key? I think it's key. First of all, the private sector. Sorry, I didn't say do you see this as a key to sustainable future? There's so much need for change, and we cannot ignore the public sector. I think private sector is very, it's always leading the transformations. And many times the public sector might be like expecting for new ideas to come to their hands. If you could see this collaboration had 8 players. I mean, there's a lot of people participating, and each of them have a responsibility to do. And I think this model can be replicated elsewhere. And that's the key. Like, once you get a model that is working, then I think it's really important to share the knowledge and explain how it worked. We're talking now about organic waste conversion, but this can apply exactly the same for glass or for plastics or for any kind of waste conversion. I mean, we're talking Southeast Asia. It's a large populated place. I think the private and public partnerships happen a lot in other regions. And I don't know, in Indonesia, it's not very common. And I think they need to happen more. I think there has to be an effort from both parties. And I think it has to be thought as an inclusive business model, not just a for-profit. I mean, it would have been really easy for a company like Renergy or like Feedworks to come here and say, I'm just going to do this privately. I'm just going to buy land and do this and get the waste, get it to my facilities and just run it on my own. But the point is not that. I think the point is to have everyone benefit and getting inclusive for it. This is an environmental service. It's providing lots of jobs. The whole system gets paid through the black soldier fry. So Renergy is an investor. They buy back the larvae and they then post-processing, to make the protein and the oil and all of the the outcome products that come out of it. But the compost goes entirely to the community. And I didn't explain it, but there is already an agro project, for education about composting, so all the local farmers can start using this compost. So this compost will be given to the communities, and it will help the Bundes, which is the company of the village, to get more waste transportation system and get more bins and get more people helping educate. So, it's not just all for profit. There's, a huge part that goes back to the community to help them scale and improve, and, has other benefits like organic compost for their, farms and for their agricultural systems. So it's to be thought, I don't think it can be all thought as private. I think the public sector needs to be there so it can integrate into the people and give benefits to the people. So again, social, economical, and environmental. I think those are the three pillars that we need to consider. And I think that partnership, private, public, will ensure that in a better way. I have another presentation. Isn't waste a bigger problem in the West, where the economy is more consumerism driven? And then why do we see more solutions? Then why do we see more solutions in Southeast Asia and not where the problem is bigger? Well, I am based in Southeast Asia, so I cannot talk about the West. I think a huge part of the movement of waste management is to reduce the waste impact. And in fact, a lot of the vendors in the Flea Market, they are, focusing on that, on the easy swaps. It's like, buy your bottle, or, so that you don't need to use plastic bottles every day. I think policies need to be focused, and even consumers need to be demanding less packaging and less one single-use products and all of that. I think in Asia it's really an obvious problem because the waste management system haven't come. I think in other countries they've already been cleaning a lot. I don't know how much recycling they have, but at least it's clean. I mean, I was living in Singapore. There's not much recycling happening there, but the place is pretty clean. So, they don't see garbage as an issue so much. Here, since there's no waste collection, the issue is huge because you see it with your own eyes. And I think incorporating waste management systems that are already improved from the traditional waste management system that maybe the West is incorporating is essential. Basically, the West were shipping most of their waste to China and other countries, so I don't think that's ideal either. I think those have a lot of externalities in the form of, pollution, transportation, and all of that. So I think that's, circular economy needs to consider all of that because we're supposed to be designing for waste out. But yeah, I don't think Southeast Asia must be the only one looking at this. It should be the whole world in particular.
Thank you, Paula. I actually just had one question of my own, if you don't mind, before we wrap up the workshop. So yeah, I was really interested to hear about the work that you've been doing to empower local communities on the ground to build in more sustainable ways using bamboo and other construction materials. So how much success have you seen with that process so far? Is it still very much in the initial phases, or have you already seen some?
Well, yeah, our bamboo trainings are in the initial phases, but I don't know if you know, Lombok had a big earthquake like a couple of years ago, and not so much in the south, but in the north communities, I mean, villages were literally flattened out. Bamboo is a, it's a product or a technique that has been dominated like in Bali and in Java, basically because the bamboo treatment plants were not here in Lombok. But Lombok has a lot of bamboo forests and they are very sustainable. I mean, we're talking that a big bamboo beton piece grows in like 4 years. In these facilities we're making, those bamboo pieces are less than 2 years old. So it's a grass, it regenerates so fast. It's a very sustainable material, and the structural properties of it are, it's stronger than steel. So in terms of, resilience for earthquake is really big. And it's a very cheap material. But the moment we had to ship the bamboo from Lombok to Bali and then ship it back here, that doubled the cost of the product itself before we even started building. So this organization called Our Bamboo, what they did is that they started their own treatment plant here in Lombok. And that was very well received in the overall project from the government. And in fact, it's been them who's been paying for the trainings, because they want to have local people know more about bamboo so they can build their homes and their facilities. And you know, when we price this facility in metal, like as a big facility for waste management, the cost was double than the cost of the facility in bamboo. So it has all benefits, and it's not very difficult to work on it. It's just that maybe, you know, it hasn't been dominated as a construction technique here. So it has to spread out more. And mostly because for a lot of Lombok people, it'll give them the opportunity to own their own buildings and build their own buildings without the need to pay a lot of money. Yeah, so hopefully it goes. My house is in bamboo. It's almost 10 years old, and it's fantastic. It's unbelievable. Okay. And you know, it works really well, and with the treatment it's completely, you know, it's completely safe against the termites and all of that. So I think it's the material of the future, especially in these regions, no, where it's tropical climate.
Yeah, I totally agree. Fantastic. And like you say, not only is it a more environmentally friendly solution, you can actually save money, and it's half the cost of building.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's important.
Yes.
That's very important.
Very important.
Great. Okay. So there's no more questions in the Q&A box. So then, Paula, I'd like to say thank you very much. That was really interesting. Lots of new ideas there, and I hope our listeners have got inspiration to go forward and build or encourage building of more sustainable buildings in the future.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. And if anyone wants to contact me, just go to bamboostudio.com. My email is there.
Great, thank you. And just to let you all know, Paula's presentation will be shared, as will all of the presentations from this expo. Just take a look at the expo website next week, and all the links will be shared on there. And before we close, I just wanted to let everybody know about our next, which is actually our final live workshop of the online expo, which will focus on ecological wastewater treatment for hotels and resorts. And that'll be delivered by Dan Tam Costa, who's the co-director of EPO Trek, and that's going to take place at 3:30 p.m. Laos time. Okay, thank you everybody for joining.
Excellent.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.